This is the film club, our monthly film club, a special urban agriculture film club. Today we have a series of events that, a series of films that are urban agriculture shorts. And we're showing these because it's part of Urban Agriculture Month, which is hosted by Sustain Australia. Now, Sustain has been hosting urban agriculture forums and events and research for a number of years now, and I've been involved in that since the beginning. But this is their second Urban Agriculture Month. And so here at the Permaculture Education Institute, we're really delighted to be partnering with them to celebrate, because ever since I was a very young child, urban agriculture has been part of my life. I absolutely love it, and I feel it's a huge part of where we need to be placing our energy and our attention to think about how we can create one planet living. As a kid, I grew up in a suburb. I was growing up in a Melbourne suburb, and I grew up in the 1970s, and it was a place where we had, everyone had backyard chickens and the fruit trees and the herbs in the backyard. It was just kind of one of those things, and I knew, because you were allowed at that time to roam the streets as kids. And we knew where all the fruit trees were. Like I'd spotted where all the plums were up and down the streets, and I knew where the wild apple tree was growing down at the local park. And it was a wonderful world of exploration and knowing where to go and find a feast. And one of my favorite things actually was my mum brought us up in this way of not having sugar or salt or anything like that. She brought us up in this really very natural food way. And I remember my brother and I used to go out and we'd be looking for some sweet treats. And there's these particular plants here in Australia called grevillea. And the grevillea flowers, beautiful flowers, when you tap them on your hand, all of the nectar comes out when they're just, really fresh. And so we'd just be going around licking off this nectar off our hands. It was so amazing. Or other times you could pluck off the little flowers and then just get the nectar from them. So as kids, like whether these were gardens or whether they were just the wild foods of the native plants, we were out there exploring, and it was a wonderful place to grow up in a suburb that had this kind of food. And this is what we're going to be exploring a fair bit in our next session next Monday, and I hope you can join us too. I'll share with you the links about it later. We're talking with David Holmgren about retro suburbia, and so he's going to join us live, and I hope you can be there too. And it's really about how to reinstate that kind of way of being and living in our cities and suburbs and town. And then when I moved to Brisbane, probably in the early 90s, I was there for 1 week. And then I was opening up the local paper, and there was this tiny little article that said, looking for people who are interested in starting a city farm. And I went, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so I joined up with this group of people. There was a few of us we met in a living room somewhere, and then said, what if we could do this? And together we created Northey Street City Farm, which if you're in Brisbane, many of you might know of that. And it's now become one of the key hubs of the national network of city farms and community gardens around Australia. And part of that too enabled us to then create what is now the Community Gardens Network. So urban agriculture, urban permaculture is very dear to my heart. So I'm really delighted to be an ambassador for Urban Agriculture Month. Earlier this month, we hosted a masterclass, which I'll share with you a link shortly, which is it was a masterclass including Nick Rose, who is the founder of this Urban Agriculture Month, and Gavin Hardy, a friend who helped us start Northey Street, who's currently on a Churchill Fellowship in Italy, and also Fiona Buning, who also a Churchill Fellow, created a microgreens farm in Canberra. So we're also having 5 podcast episodes talking to backyard beekeepers, urban mushroom farmers, community gardens, university gardens, a whole lot of different people we're talking to on that. So I'll also drop the links for that. But today what we have is 4 short films. And I'm actually really delighted to see many of you sharing in where you're calling in from. That's wonderful. I'm seated here on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi, and like to pay my respects to elders past and present. And at the moment, the country is coming alive in the evening time. It's shifted season. I can hear it. That's I don't know if you can hear it. It's very loud outside with all the cicadas. It's very different here between the seasons. So our 4 films, let me tell you what our 4 short films are. And what I would like to do is to invite you at the end of these films to stay around and be part of the conversation, exploring what it was that inspired us in these films, or to bring our questions to the group. Feel free to stay for that chat afterwards. Feel free to drop questions or comments or links in the chat as we're going along. And also, if you want to go at the end and you'd just like to come and watch, that is also totally fine. So welcome to you all. I'm really delighted to have your company here today. And I also wanted to thank you, those of you who were able to donate. Thank you so much. Every single one of these events that I host, whether it be a masterclass or a film club, every time you see the links to register and it says donate here, all of that money that is donated there, I gather and I send directly 100% to our friends in the refugee camps in East Africa. And actually, I think someone who's about to start a new project for youth or another project is Roland. And I think she's here, Roland and William. So hello to you. Thank you for being here. So say good day to them if you get a chance later on. So yes, stick around at the end for a chat. I would love that. So the first film we're going to screen tonight is a really wonderful little film called Abundant Urban Garden. And it's actually a film of Kat Lavers in Melbourne. And she is doing a permaculture garden, an amazing permaculture garden on just 100 square meters. And she produces a huge amount of food. So that will be the first film. The second film we're going to screen is Living a Radically Simple Permaculture Life on a Quarter of an Acre. So this is in a small town, not far from actually where David Holmgren lives. Meg, who's featured in this film, works with David Holmgren. The third film is a short film, a very short film, 5 minutes in fact, from a small, it's a half-acre property on the edges of, so it's more in the peri-urban area of Christchurch in New Zealand. And the fourth and final film is Living Sustainably in the City, Degrowth in the Suburbs, which is actually a film talking about the household of Dr. Samuel Alexander, who runs the Simplicity Institute in Melbourne. And so that's a fantastic one too, because I think it's about 1/10 of an acre that they're growing food on. So this is a way to really have a deep dive into seeing how people are applying permaculture in their small scale backyards. And because it's Urban Agriculture Month, Australia are particularly focused on these films, but wherever you're calling in from, I'm sure there are things in here that will be useful and inspiring for you. And also, like I said before, please don't be shy for dropping in any links to any of your urban permaculture projects that you're working on, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or a website or whatever you like to share. So feel free to go ahead and do that. All right, so I am just going to start sharing my screen. So I'll drop in the link for Happen Films in a minute, because you can watch a whole lot of different short films there that they've created. We screened recently a film that they did, a new documentary. I'll drop in the link for that as well. And I know that they've got a whole lot of new ones on the go. There was a comment that the quality of the videos that were being shared wasn't so great. So I'll send out the links to these particular ones if you wanted to actually watch them again on your one screen or a big screen and smooth it out. Zoom is a good medium for communication, but it has its limitations. So what I would love now to do, because there is a lot of threads that emerged out of that. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for being here for these films. If you need to go now, I would like to say thank you for taking your time out tonight to be part of this urban agriculture event here at the Permaculture Education Institute. If you'd like to stick around, please do. And I'd love to invite anyone who'd like to share something. Because we are so many, I think what would work, down the bottom, there's these little reaction buttons. So if you click this, you can raise your hand and it pops you up to the top corner, which means that we can see who'd like to say something. So while you're sort of thinking, maybe there's something that you'd like to share, you know, some of the key threads that I heard coming out of that was one about time, that actually this way of life was finding a way either to create more time in our lives or to actually prioritize our time to do this thing. There was a conversation around the ideas of freedom. I heard that term used a lot, that this gave a greater level of freedom in life and richness and wealth, even though it was less about the money, but more about the richness of life. There was a real focus on how relocalizing the food system can help to be at the core and the heart of this, really looking at how to reduce the energy usage and to rethink that, to disconnect. There was like people turning off, oh, I've disconnected from the gas and I've disconnected from this. I don't need it anymore. I'm free of being connected to those systems. And I know that Meg was talking about being free of connected to supermarkets and felt so liberated by that. There was, a lot of talk about being connected and making a contribution to community, about non-materialism, valuing other things in life. And also something that I heard a bit too was this notion of, it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. It was a gradual process. So what is it that is moving within us now? That is where we can start today. And then we don't know what's going to come next. It's not like there's a plan of transformation. It's like, what do we notice today that we feel like we can actually do something about? And sometimes that depends on your context too. Maybe there's things in your community that are happening which make it easier to do this as opposed to that. And so you go where the energy is and where there's other support. There's lots of comments coming up through here. That's wonderful. Thank you. Does anyone have any reflections or thoughts or questions or anything that jumped out at them as being a kind of a key soundbite that they heard, or an idea that moved in them? When you saw it, something happened. You felt, oh, that's really important what they're doing there. Or
well, it really inspired me that one of those, sorry, I'm just getting over flu, so my voice is a bit weak, but how one of those films showed a lady who'd done it all on her own. It's all become a bit of a blur to me now, but I think it was the third or second one we saw. And I don't plan on doing it on my own, but eventually when I buy my own place, I hope to make it a permaculture garden, at least a garden. I don't know how big it will be, but it's really nice to see these films of other people. Like, I already don't have gas because I decided I could run everything on electricity. I grow my own some things that I can eat, even though I've only got a balcony. Thankfully, it faces north. And so, thank you. Yeah, very inspiring.
Thanks, Sally. Lovely to see you. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morag. I was just going to say, I liked the fact that they were, and I think I just saw Amy in the comments has said the same thing, that they were doing things like quite slowly. So I loved it when she said we were using the bin liners and then we didn't need the bin liners, and then we thought, okay, we're not using the bin liners, this is the next thing, because sometimes you feel quite overwhelmed and you kind of like have that guilt of, oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that and I should be doing more and it should all happen immediately. And I don't think life is like that. So I think it's really nice to see how other people have done that, and it is a slower process. It's not just going to happen overnight. And I think, as everyone, we all love Betty.
We all want a Betty.
We all want a Betty from Father Christmas.
Oh yeah, well there you go. That, and it's also, I love the solar cookers too. Like I've got one that's like a little suitcase, and it was made in India, and so you can carry it around. I got one for the local school too, and you just open it up and point it towards the sun. It's got a mirror on this side, and it's like a nice big black box, and so you can actually put 4 pots in there. and they're stainless steel pots with black around the outside. And so in one I can be cooking rice, another one I can be cooking like the root vegetables, another one I can be cooking, like a stewy, saucy curry thing or something, and then the other one I can be cooking a cake, all at the one time. And you can't overcook with them. You just kind of point it towards the sun. As long as you've got a sunny day, that's obviously the key thing. So having a biodigester is good. And I mean, I guess this is something that points to permaculture, is that we're always looking to what are the multiple ways in which we can be meeting those basic needs. When we're designing a permaculture system, we're looking at how many different ways we can collect and absorb water into our site, how many of the different diverse ways that we can be producing food, and then that goes to energy as well. So maybe it's a solar cooker when the sun is out, and save your Betty gas for when it goes away, and then you use that. And if it's if you're in a cooler climate, then you might have your wood stove for another time, but maybe have those multiple systems. It's also like how I talk about composting, not just have one compost, but you spread it around, have in situ composting all over, so you're enriching simultaneously in many places. Christine, go ahead.
Hello everyone, here I am.
Hi.
The one thing I loved lots of things, but one in particular struck me was the people in New Zealand who were actually running that program where they went out into the community to, say, the older people or more isolated people, and they were helping them in their gardens, grow food, and at the same time reaping the benefits of those people's knowledge around growing food, because after all, older people probably lived through a time when they certainly simply had to grow their own food, and we have moved away from that. But now it's so good to see everyone moving back into it. But I particularly loved the idea of where you can't get much in the way of solutions to these huge problems if there's just a few people beavering away. But if millions of people are working away at millions of small problems, then you're going to make great progress. And I thought that was beautiful. And the other thing I liked about it was these people just went out and did it. They didn't wait for, the ideal time or the ideal funding or anything like that, because really, if we wait that long, it's not going to come along, is it? It's never going to be the ideal time, So you just go out and you just jolly well get on with it and do it. And those are the things that I particularly liked out of all the range of films. But I thought they were all very inspiring. Good on them.
Yeah, there's lots of really good aspects of them, and I love the ones that you've just picked out there, particularly that intergenerational knowledge sharing is so important. And also Meg and Patrick were talking about also learning from Indigenous cultures. I think that was a really important story, and just what you said there at the end there too, about this idea of that if all of us are doing something and going out and making a change or something, it does create that cultural shift, that perception shift that Samuel was talking about at the end, about creating systems change. So, sometimes you think, oh, household change doesn't do it, but if everyone's kind of doing a bit here and there's like people exchanging things over, and it brings a different kind of politic and like a real type of politics into the story. And I do really think that is one of the key strengths of permaculture, and what is something that has been there from the very beginning, is this idea that it is radical and revolutionary just through this kind of way of it being a decentralized, there's no one leader, there's no one control of it. It is just, it spreads, it ripples and myceliates from person to person, community to community, adapting and readapting and finding ways to land itself in local communities because it makes sense. I mean, all of what these people were talking about is really about living in a way that just makes sense when you're looking at the big picture of what's going on, and really grounding that and finding a way that it can kind of have that sense of wholeness. And but like I said, it's it's not like, okay, well, I'm just going to completely turn my life around tomorrow.
It's not an anarchy. nobody's suggesting this is an anarchic approach.
No.
People are doing it in a very mindful and kind way. It's not a destructive approach at all.
No.
I guess it's the degrowth idea that can be perceived as being very radical, because the economy has been for several centuries based on growth of economics, growth of profit. But of course, that means growth of extraction out of the earth as well, all the resources and so on, without giving back. But yeah, I agree. It is radical, but it's not anarchy.
No.
I don't think there's anything to be frightened of.
No, I don't think so at all. And I there's a lot of conversation around the term degrowth, whether it's a useful term or not. I think in terms of, so here's growth, here's the growth mentality of conventional economics. So it's just pegging it straight for that, going, well, actually, we need to be doing degrowth. And it's just using the same language so people get it. It's kind of a hook to be able to help people understand. And that is where it's coming from. There's some really great thinkers in that space too. One that I love is Jason Hickel, and he has a really fantastic series of books, and he's based in England. He's originally from South Africa. So check out Jason Hickel. Less is More is one of his books as well. Yeah. And really highly recommend him as someone in that degrowth space. I wonder if there's any other threads. Oh, Jerry. Well, thanks, Christine. Jerry, go ahead. Hi there.
Hi everybody. Thanks, Morag. Thanks everybody. Oh, I'm so inspired. There was a lot occur with what everybody else has said, but then there was a couple of other things that jumped out for me that I sort of made me really excited about what I might do in my space. And one of the things in the first video was the quails. I was really interested in that, about them being quiet, because I have a kind of, suburban garden space, the deep litter system on a concrete base. I was really excited to learn more about that. Yeah, and I loved I had total woodpile envy.
Yeah.
In the I think was it the second video. Oh my god, the woodpile. Yeah, and I loved what he was saying about because obviously in the northern hemisphere here in Ireland it's very wet and much colder than where a lot of you guys are at, and wood is really, in terms of a renewable resource, is one of the big things that we need, that we use. I loved the bike trailer. That I was really excited by that. In the second video, yeah, there was just loads of stuff. And the car next door, the car rental app, I was really excited to sort of see if there's anything like that in my area, because that's not something that I've come across or heard about. But yeah, just so much food for thought. Yeah, really excited and really grateful for these films. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, look, that's lots of great points there, Jerry. And what if you can't find a local car share, these apps exist. I think the whole idea with a lot of these apps is they start up in different hubs, and you can kind of activate a hub and use the apps that exist, and those sorts of things. And something that I would really encourage you all to do, if you're looking at ways of trying to activate more community conversation, is to have a bit of a screening like this. Grab these films, grab a couple of other films, maybe what are the topics that you want to activate in your community, and share these films where you are. So then you can sit and have this kind of conversation afterwards, maybe over, a local food feast or something, and really, I think sharing films is an incredibly powerful way to activate conversations that you'd like to have, rather than, sometimes you can go and do a talk in a community, but just that visual of seeing it there and how it works and people's heartfelt, responses to those things. I think that's a really important thing. I wonder if anyone else has any final thoughts or comments. We just got a couple of minutes left before we head off for our evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. Christine, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, I think this urban agriculture / permaculture month is fabulous, and I hope it keeps going as an annual event. And thanks very much for hosting all these for us, Morag and Stacey. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. I was wanting to just share with you actually the Urban Agriculture Month. I'm just going to grab it up on my Urban Agriculture Month. Oops. Here we go. I'm just going to share in the link in case you didn't see it before. So you can find other events that are there. Also, I'm just going to, when I restarted, I lost all my lovely events that I had here for you. I'm ready to show you. I'm just going to share with you the event for coming along next Monday with David Holmgren. That's the link there. And I'll send you out an email with links to all the different Happen Films things and everything else. So you've got that as a backup. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along. I wonder what you might be all doing in terms of where you are in your communities. Like those of you who I do know who are here on this call, there is a remarkable amount of action going on right here in this group here. Like the people I know from doing programs with children in refugee settlements to, I can see Kate there who's working with a film crew around regenerative soil practices. There's people all over. Sol is setting up like a local food system community seed bank up in Mullaney, not far from me here. Like every single one of you, I'm sure, has something going on. And it's, if you just feel that and know that you're part of this global community who are doing this work, who are taking steps at whatever stage you are at in your journey, and just to know that you can reach out. And those of you who are part of the Permaculture Educators Program, we have that hive space where we can be sharing our resources and our ideas and getting feedback and asking questions. And so please make sure that you make the most of that space as a way to share all these things. So with that, we're at the end of our time here today. I'd like to thank you so much. Come again next Monday, and we will be talking live with David Holmgren. So the focus will be on retrosuburbia, and so that will be an opportunity. He'll be sharing some ideas first, and then we'll have a chance to open up for conversation. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks, everyone. Take care.